challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
The Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. Today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, it's another beautiful day. Every day, every new week presents opportunity, new ones, and another opportunity has presented itself for us to look at issues related to business, finance, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, our obligation on this program is to shape policy and advance development with our conversation. Today, we're set to give you the best of programming, and we'll be looking at the economic relations between the U.S. and China. We're going to make reference to the visit of the U.S. Treasury Secretary, who was in China over the weekend to have some talks about the overcapacity of the Chinese government. And also we're going to look at, the hike in electricity in Nigeria has been generating a lot of controversy. So wherever you are, this is an opportunity for you to share your view. Whatever you have with you, maybe your coffee, or you have your tea, whatever it's your preference, or if your breakfast is ready, get ready as we are set to give you the best of conversation today. I'm not alone. Lady B, Blessing, is here to also give you the best of programming.
Okay, I didn't even know that I've been knighted. I'm not lady. Good morning, Femi. How are you doing?
I'm good.
How was your weekend? Yeah, good to see you too.
My weekend was productive, as usual. Busy, but quite productive.
I can say it because you look relaxed.
Yeah, great.
Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange this morning. Yes, how does the idea of a new national identity card linked to your bank account sound? Well, the federal government of Nigeria has that plan. How's it going to work out? We'll discuss all of that, among other issues that Femi has already told you about on the show today. I'll go to now as the news studio where Lovina Emma will bring you the news update. Good morning, Lovina.
Good morning, Femi and Blessing. Hello, welcome to News Update on SOUQ News Television. Today we bring you major developmental happenings over the weekend. I am Lovina Emma. We begin from Nigeria. As part of its efforts to expand access to government services, improve financial inclusion, prioritize data protection in compliance with international standards, the Nigerian government, in partnership with NIMC, CBN, and NIBSS, has launched an integrated identity and payment solution codenamed the National Card Scheme. This innovative solution, which aims to empower citizens and contribute to nation-building efforts, will introduce a general multi-purpose card embedded with verifiable national identity features to fulfill the mandate of NIMC Act No. 23 of 2007. The card serves as a default national identity card, enabling cardholders to prove identity access across various services and promote financial inclusion. Eligibility for the card requires registration with the National Identification Number, NIN. Additionally, the card functions as a debit or prepaid card linked to users' bank accounts, facilitating financial transactions. Moving on, in response to the decision of the Nigerian government to increase electricity tariffs of Band A customers across the country, the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry has expressed deep concerns and warning of significant threats to businesses' long-term sustainability. The Chamber's president, Mr. Emeka Obegolu, speaking with newsmen in Abuja, noted that increased tariffs would adversely impact businesses across various sectors, particularly small and medium enterprises, crucial to the economy. He highlighted the existing challenges faced by entrepreneurs, including reduced demand, supply chain disruptions, and financial constraints, stating that higher electricity costs would compound these difficulties. They urge authorities to reconsider the tariff hike, advocating for alternative solutions that prioritize business needs and facilitate ease of operations. And now away from Nigeria. Senegal's Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko has announced its government cabinet consisting of 25 ministers and 5 junior ministers has been endorsed by President Bassirou Diomaye. The Council of Ministers tasked with implementing President's reforms like replacing CFA franc and auditing oil and gas contracts faces high expectations domestically and internationally. Notable appointments include Chik Diba, previously head of budget programming as finance minister, and Birame Souleye Diop, formerly vice president of Sonko and Faye's disbanded PASTEF party, taking charge of oil and energy, and Yassine Fall assumes the role of foreign affairs minister. The swearing-in ceremony will take place on Tuesday. And away from Africa, real wages in Japan have continued its downward trend for a 23rd consecutive month in February, falling by 1.3% year-on-year as consumer prices rose, impacting purchasing power. This decline in real wages is closely monitored by the Bank of Japan, which considers pay and inflation data in deciding monetary policy adjustments. Despite a 1.8% nominal pay increase in February, the growth in wages is outpaced by inflation, prompting concerns about consumer spending. According to reports, Japanese firms have committed to significant wage increases this year, marking the largest rise in 33 years, as special payments, including bonuses, declined by 5.5% year-on-year. Finally, Hong Kong leader John Lee has announced plans to implement additional measures aimed at revitalizing the securities markets in response to economic challenges stemming from China's slowdown and geopolitical tensions. At the HSBC Global Investment Summit, Lee highlighted efforts already underway, such as enhancing listing rules for technology firms to boost market competitiveness. While details were not disclosed, he noted upcoming initiatives to improve transaction mechanisms, investment services, and market promotion. Hong Kong's economy grew by 3.2% in 2023, with capital flight contributing to the local stock market's decline, making it the worst performing major index. The Hang Seng Index dropped nearly 14% in 2023, marking its 4th consecutive year of decline, prompting Hong Kong to announce measures to attract capital businesses and visitors. And this is all we can take on news updates today on SOUQ News Television. I am Lavina Emma. Many thanks for watching.
All right, glad to have you join us. Thank you so much for the news update. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll kick off our global policy update for today. Stay with us.
Lateef Jakande. Born Lateef Kayode Jakande in the Ekbetedo area of Lagos Island, Lagos State, on July 1929. He studied at the Lagos Public School at Enowa, Lagos Island, then at Bonham Memorial Methodist School, Port Harcourt, King's College, enrolled at Ilesha Grammar School, where he edited a literary paper called The Quarterly Mirror. Jakonde began a career in journalism in 1949 with the Daily Service and joined the Nigerian Tribune in 1953. The owner, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, appointed Jakonde editor-in-chief of the Tribune in 1956. Jakonde established John West Publications in 1975 after leaving Tribune and began to publish the Lagos News. He served as the first president of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN. Jakonde ran for election as executive governor of Lagos State in 1979 on the Unity Party of Nigeria platform. His administration was effective and open and implemented the cardinal policies of his party. He introduced housing and educational programs targeting the poor, building new neighborhood primary and secondary schools, and providing free primary and secondary education. He gave poor people's children education, and many of them are now very prominent in the society today. Jakonde established the Lagos State University and constructed over 30,000 housing units. After the military takeover in 1983, Jakonde was charged, prosecuted, and convicted of treason and later pardoned. He served as Minister of Works under the Sani Abacha military regime. He died in Lagos on February 11, 2021. Lateef Jakonde was the first civilian governor of Lagos State. Lateef Kayode Jakonde, SOUQ Enlightenment.
All right, let's start our global policy update looking at the latest development between the U.S. and China, where the U.S. Treasury Secretary Yellen has raised concern about the overcapacity of China when it comes to the manufacturing sector. In recent times, China has engaged in the manufacturing of electric vehicles, which to the U.S., according to U.S., has been raising some concern about the imbalanced macroeconomic activities taking place in China. Why is the excessive capacity of China of interest to the U.S.? Let's shift the conversation to our in-house guest who was joining us. We've been joined by Dr. Idauza Samazi, as usual. Glad to have you join us this morning.
Very good morning.
How was your weekend?
Always healthy. Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning.
Glad to have you. Always busy, yeah. It's what we'll do. Our job is 24 hours. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, weekend is much more hectic than weekdays for some of us.
That's true. All right, let's look at the thrust of this conversation, these economic ties. You know, I want to use the word, if that would be preferable, the economic rivalry between the U.S. and China, where the U.S. Treasury Secretary is also raising concerns about the overcapacity of the Chinese manufacturing sector. Talking about some of the activities China has engaged in recent times, the manufacturing of vehicles, solar panels. The U.S. is raising these concerns. Why do you think these concerns are coming at this time, and how important are they to economic growth, or when it comes to the global trade? What will be the impact?
Well, I think the American government is struggling to survive, and hugely threatened by the capacity of the Chinese government to be able to supply the world with EV vehicles, and at a very reduced price compared to what the American companies are doing. And this is raising concern for investors in America. This is what the real issues are, but we see Yellen trying to convince China that it would be better for them to have a balanced growth right home, because according to her, the Chinese consuming population is disempowered financially, and it would be better that China also see how to reduce excess of production to supply the world market than focusing on internal economic balance. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how that is, but international trade is about negotiation. It's trying to put your cards on the table and see how much you can address. Because the huge issue in the American elections this year is the economic survival of the United States of America and how they can retain superiority in terms of the participation in the global space, and that they are fast losing to China because of these, what she described as overcapacity. China has invested so much. And you know, this is because the Chinese government over some years, over 15 years now, had asked themselves a very simple and basic question. They had looked at the trend from the 1980s to date, and they called all their business people together and said, in the 1980s, it was something that was very, very, looking for this right word to use now, to put money in Japan, for example. So it was profitable for big companies in America to go invest in Japan. And that was because labor at that time was very cheap, technology was cheap, and of course, Europe was saturated because of cost of employment. And then everybody went to Japan. Now, as the economy of Japan evolved, monies were moved out of Japan to the Asian tigers. You had Malaysia, you had Indonesia, Singapore. These people became the new destination for investment because labor also had increased. And now, while money was in Singapore and China is growing, of course, in the 2000s, we saw that money also was moving out of Asia and it was coming into China. Why? Because we also see that labor was still very cheap in China. So what was the driving force for this high cost of production? And the factor that it was labor. So Chinese asked themselves, if this money has been moving around from Japan and now it has come to Asia and in China, now labor is also getting up. Because as economic is evolving, the cost of labor also go higher. So what's going to happen? Will this company also move out their money out of China, maybe to third world country? So that was a big question to answer. And that what was the single variable that was driving this cost? And said it was labor. And because if you don't increase the wages, labor will go on strike. And you shut down your economy. Productivity is down. And they said to themselves, can we find a replacement for labor? And this was just a time that humanoids and robotics were evolving. So Chinese took advantage of robotics and humanoids and invested heavily in that industry to replace human hands in the factory. So that if economy is down, you turn off the button. If the economy is require excess, you press the button. And nobody go on strike, nobody protest. And then, of course, you can maintain price and nothing goes up. And I think it's what we've seen that is working out for China as we speak. For over 60 to 65% of the workforce in factories are done by robotics. And they are not asking for any wage increment. So that is what is happening. And I think it's just strategy thinking that they are positioned themselves, and today they are the world's largest producer. And that's why we're talking about overcapacity. So you can't see a robot say he's tired or you want to go on break.
All right, so in this case where China has been able to achieve manufacturing overcapacity and it's beginning to hurt the American economy to the extent that the Treasury Secretary would want to have talks with the Vice Premier of China to see how they can come around it. But it's not guaranteed that China would accede to the demands of the US. What happens to developing a strategy or even a technology that matches what China has to boost production in the US? Does the US not have that capacity?
Yeah, but you see, that's the point I'm making. You see, when you're factoring price, you're looking at what are the components that comes into pricing a particular product. You're seeing human labor. You're seeing inputs, whether they are raw materials and the rest of all those things, and you put your margin, and that tells how much price you can sell. Now, when you look at the scenario I just painted, in terms of human inputs, you'll find that whatever that is produced in China will ever be cheaper than what is produced in the US. And so as long as the world is facing a huge economic challenge, people are offering to pay less, not more, no matter how much you think or you speak quality. And as a matter of fact, really, because China produces everybody, even the Americans are using Chinese-made product because it's cheaper than what is produced at home. This is why people are asking that the US probably have to raise tariff so that the prices of the goods produced in China that is sold in America can be as competitive as those ones that are produced locally. But if you put that as a equation, US is just 300 million people. But China has a whole world to sell to at that cheaper cost. So whether US market or not, the Chinese market will still be finding relevance among developing nations and even Europe. So you can't stop them from entering. And even if you raise tariff at home, it will only affect one market. It will not affect the global market. And that's why I feel that the trade secretaries in China, rather than fight a trade war, and she's opting for a negotiation and see whether Chinese can be convinced to lower its production capacity so that, or maybe increase price, and then see how you can find balance both home in China and also globally.
The U.S. Treasury Secretary had a conversation with the Chinese Vice Premier. The conversation lasted for almost 4 hours, and then the concern raised by Yellen is the fact that China needs to give a level playing field for American firms and American manufacturers as well. It appears as if China has prioritized its own. How do you see this playing out? Do you see this advocacy being taken seriously? The need to create the same playing field for American manufacturers as well?
Yeah, I don't think that's a Chinese issue. And that was what Donald Trump has also been clamoring for in the campaign, that if he had won the last election, by now he would have been able to put American companies to be as competitive as possible. But all the things that they were trying to do at that time were distorted by Democrats coming into power, and all the policies that they were trying to put in place to ensure that the American company become really competitive was distorted. So this is the issue. And I think they had to really concentrate more at home, at economic policy at home. Like they say, international relations is the extension of domestic policy. But nobody go to the international scene and sit on the table and negotiating for other countries in the world. Every country is negotiating for itself. So we can't see China negotiating themselves out of relevance, of profit-making and productivity because they are wanting a balance of trade for American company. So it's left for Americans to also see what strategy they need to put in place and how they need to actually drive and convince China otherwise, so that they can lower the capacity to produce or deliver. But that for me is issue that, yes, the Chinese premier might say yes, but I'm not saying as I conceding to that. And a couple of other things that also came out in that meeting, which of course including the financing of Russia from the American banks and the things like that. Those are very high diplomatic and sensitive materials. We see the world congregate around NATO and Russia. So how they are able to also press that on is a different ballgame. And I think in the weeks and days to come, we'll see how this play out between America and China. But I understand that this is a superiority and ego war, and I'm not sure that China is buying to any pressure.
All right, you mentioned that when Donald Trump was president of America, he had plans to help the U.S. capacity in terms of production and the trade issues it's having with China. What do you think that Donald Trump would have done differently than what the U.S. has been able to do over the years in terms of how much of production they're able to do and the competitive advantage that their companies have? And then secondly, the Treasury Secretary mentioned that the model that is being employed by China, the production model that is employed by China is capable of causing global economic dislocation. What would that actually mean for the world?
Well, the simple way to understanding the politics of America is to see what the Republicans stand for and what the Democrats stand for. Now, once you see a Republican government in place in America, what you're going to see is that there will be a targeted policy to ease life for companies and corporations and big businesses. Either you see reduction of taxes, reduction or relaxing of regulations on companies so that they can become globally very competitive. And what that means is that if you are relaxing taxes and you're giving incentive to companies to survive, then of course you see pricing become very difficult for the local people. Now, you see Republicans being pro-business and Democrats being pro-people. Now, they're looking for more money. Democrats are always looking for more money from companies, which come in the form of tax, to be able to meet their social obligations to a citizen, which is the real essence of their being. Now, this is what is also affecting pricing. So if you tax company, they transfer that bill to the final consumer, and that makes the cost of production become higher. Now, this is the difference between the Republican and the Democratic regime in America, and that affects really how companies survive. Now, what you see is that once prices become high, the consumer, because they are intelligent buyers, will want to buy from where things are cheaper. So what the Biden regime needs to do is to see how to empower or incentivize corporations in America to be able to produce at prices that are competitive with China. Because in terms of quality, they are matching. So why will I need to spend more buying a made-in-American product if I can get it cheaper in China and the quality is the same? So this is the decisions that consumer will take. And that is what is affecting this industry. So is it that you have to losing the grip on the corporations and allow them to make profits at home. And then, of course, you reduce their taxes, give them more incentive, and then they can produce at lower prices that can be as competitive as what will be produced in China. And this is where the challenge is for the democratic regime. But looking at trade dislocation, that's what it is. We cannot but encourage all countries in the world to be as productive as China. And that's what it is. So what it means is that if China is producing at this capacity and they're able to provide things that are very cheap globally, all factories in the world will be shutting down. That's what it means. And that's why you see the secretary is talking about the global economic dislocations. Because they come to your country and say to you at a cheaper price than what you can produce locally, and the quality is even better. So you see your people naturally will protest. So it's like pushing the world back again to protectionism, where you have to enact laws to ensure that entering of goods that are made from China become a problem. And I think this is what the Women Secretary is speaking to, that we need to see how to tread softly so that Chinese don't overextend their capacity and then we don't dislocate the global economic order.
Now, the U.S. lawmakers, they are calling on Biden administration to increase tariffs on electric vehicles made by the Chinese manufacturing companies in order to encourage the U.S. producers. Do you see Biden yielding to this demand, just like what Trump did a few years back?
Well, if the government of American yield to the pressure of the Congress to put increased taxes on goods or vehicles made from the U.S., they should know that they are not a monopoly of economic tools, because America is also selling to China. So that's one way to look at it. So if you're increasing, that of course increases the hostility between the two nations. That's what it means. So if you are targeting me and you want to ruin me economically, you see Chinese must also be looking out for a way to hit back at America. And that of course may not be as sweet as it would be. And of course, don't also forget what that implication will mean, because China then will be looking for that market. And then if you are protecting them from entering into your country, then you cannot stop them from entering into rogue states. And they, of course, consolidate the relation between China and those who American call rogue states. And then, of course, complicate what you see, global security issues. So these are issues that, of course, are critical. And I think that is why the Biden administration is prioritizing diplomacy, negotiation over trade instruments of control.
All right, so the U.S. Treasury Secretary says that a discussion with the Vice Premier of China, she can consider the 4-hour talk as productive. So does that mean that there might not be need for a trade war? There might just be some compromise along the way. Do you foresee compromise?
Well, I think Chinese are very strategic, and like they also have reported locally that it was a productive meeting. It was useful. That's at the diplomatic table. How these are going to translate into numbers are the things that we have to be looking at in the days and in the weeks to come. Is it that we're going to see a China that is going to reduce its productive capacity? Or are we going to see a China that is going to increase prices of what it produces by itself and see how much to boost the local economy to create a balance in the Chinese local economy? All these things are not something that we can take away from conversation at table. So like they say in my local village, it is the person who argues with the king that stays longer in Nini. If you say yes to the king, the conversation gets over quickly. So I think these are for me what that conversation are. China is bent on being the largest economy in the world and being the most superior country. And that, of course, is an ambition, I think, that the president of China will not want to joke with.
All right, it's time for us to go on a short break. We'll be right back in a moment. Stay with us.
The National Theatre, Igomu, built during the military regime of Olusegun Obasanjo and finished in the time for the Second World Festival of Black Arts and Culture, FESTAC, in 1977. The theatre holds amazing treasures and memories. The artworks fill everyone with pride. The National Arts Theatre is visible from the motorway which connects Lagos Island and the mainland. The National Theatre is packed with the artworks of legendary contemporary Nigerian artists, stained glass walls by Yusuf Grillo, sculptures and murals by Lamidi Fakeye, Erabo Emopai, and many others. It was put to full use for a month as one of the 4 venues of the Second World Black and African Festival of Arts and Culture, tagged FESTAC 77. The complex hosted 16,000 participants from 56 African countries and the diaspora in an unprecedented showcase of African music, fine art, literature, drama, dance, and religion. The National Art Theatre was built and designed by Techno Expert Stroll, a Bulgarian company mirroring the Palace of Culture and Sports in Varna, Bulgaria. Completed in 1976, the building is one of the largest and most beautiful of its kind on the African continent. It consists of a central hall with 5,000 seats, a collapsible stage, that can be quickly rebuilt, a conference hall with 1,600 seats, 2 large exhibition halls, and 2 cinemas with 800 seats each. The theater complex has a dressing room for artists, a garage, offices, coffee bars, and a buffet. It has indoor TV and radio systems, as well as booths with facilities for simultaneous translation of languages and hectares of lush green lawn around. The majestic structure sits in Igomu like a quiet mountain, mesmerizing visitors and passers-by. The National Theatre, SOUQ Enlightenment.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, indeed, we're still in the business of shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. We're still looking at the economic relations between the U.S. and China, where the U.S. Treasury Secretary has raised concern about the overcapacity of the Chinese manufacturing companies. And we still have our own here with us, Dr. Idauza Samaze. Glad to know you're still here with us.
You have kept me here.
As always. All right. Now, the economic rivalry between the U.S. and China has been an age-long thing. But let's look at the impact on developing nations, because it's looking at this power play won't stop. You know, they remain strategic partners. Whichever you look at it, or whichever way you look at it, they will ever remain strategic partners. But what will be the impact of this power play, these economic ties, and then this rivalry between the U.S. and the China on African nations or developing nations?
Well, I just think we live in a common world, and that people talk about the gains and the ills of globalization. You have a one world that is united together by technology, and so we all have equal access, as it were. You have the American having issues here and China having issues. But if you have any diplomatic row between China and America, what you feel elsewhere is, like they say, when the elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. So those are the issues. And that's because most of the developing world had not leveraged the power of education to see how to grow their economy and be as self-reliant and resilient as possible. So once there's a global shock, the poorer people or the poorer nations, they bear the brunt and they suffer. So that's what it is, as long as those struggle for supremacy continue. And if you actually have studied the history of China, and you know that Chinese are very proud people, because they have one of the most superior civilizations before the emergence of America. Although if you remember the Opium War, how the British naval power really suppressed that civilization at the time. And then, of course, rising from those rubbles of defeat, and they're trying to see how to position themselves on the world stage. That's what Chinese is doing, and they really don't care about what other people are doing. They are focusing on themselves, and they are looking internally. And they've been able to do that since 1948. You remember that at such a point, when Mao Zedong became the Chairman Mao, as is popularly called, had to shut down China from connecting with the world for a period of 30 years. And within that period, a new culture was evolved by the Chinese people, that even the current language speak now came in that period. And so you see how strategic a country can be to compete globally. So it's not something they started yesterday. It's something that they've been doing all their way, but they're also very conscious and they don't want to suffer defeat. And that is why people are talking today, really. That China is not just developing industrially, even in terms of military capability, they are also doing very hugely. And you can see all the drones that are flying around in Taiwan to show to the world that, look, China is not just an economic hub, China is also a military power. And so these are the things that are before us, and we do hope that this diplomatic route between China and America end at trade, and it does not translate into other area of power and struggle. Otherwise, there will be a catastrophic consequences globally.
Would it be said or seen as the world was sleeping when China was so determined and resolved to become a world superpower, and it has gone ahead in terms of trade, military, as you've talked about, and even politically? And what are the lessons to learn for countries that may want to build on their strength?
Well, the same laws and principles that governs the world, and that's why they say to people today, even at individual level, if you are so concerned about what other people are doing or what other people are saying, you will actually not be able to develop yourself. And so the best way to actually develop and evolve successfully is for you to actually focus on yourself. And I think that's what the Chinese government had done over years. They don't really focus on what's happening on the outside. They are more focused about what they can do and how to grow resilience and how to support whatever thing that is happening within the local China. And so that is what they are concerned about. The Chinese want to perpetuate their culture. They want to see that their religion is one of the best in the world. They want to see an economy that is growing. And so they are not actually out there to say, okay, we want to compete with you. So you develop your internal capacity, and that's what you take to the global space. And if you have the quality and you have the right pricing, then of course you can penetrate. So they are doing diplomacy because they have perfected their art at home. Their technology had been tested and now is trusted globally. And then, of course, everybody is welcoming China. They have made so much money also to throw around to nations that are developing, which is actually making Chinese to be a strong force to be reckoned with globally. So what nations need to learn is to see how to perpetuate themselves, focus on yourself, and stop really looking up to the outside. And once you can shut yourself out from the distractions that come from global politics, then you will be able to develop capacity and potential within yourself. And this, of course, when you perfect, you can commercialize and sell to the global space. And I think that's what nations should learn.
As much as we're talking about the differences or the rivalry between the US and China, interestingly, I realized that they have certain things in common. And I would like to make reference to it the way an analyst put it, and I would like you to react to it. He says, Americans value education just like China values education. Americans work hard, and China works even harder. Both Chinese and Americans enjoy doing things together. They have communal spirit. How do you react to that?
Well, I won't agree completely with those sentiments. The truth of the matter is, as it is today, really, in terms of education, China are doing better than America because the American population is not focusing on education anymore, but that used to be because the lot of things that come from comfort when you are successful. Managing success is always a difficult story. And so in terms of emphasis on education, American education system is deteriorating. You can't compare with China as we speak, really. Chinese is having the best education system globally. And this is an education that is so functional as against what you see that's playing out elsewhere in the globe. So, yes, they may have that kind of experience, but it's different. But then again, you come to China and America in terms of cultural superiority or community life. And I think it's also different because there's so much individualism in America, and that is not pronounced in a communist China. So you see, you have capitalism playing out in both countries here, but you see, communism is the superstructure upon which the Chinese communities are built, while Americans' own is built on individualism. So what you see play is that you can't see the kind of that consensus. As large as China is, you can see the entire parliament all giving one man the nod to lead them as long as he's alive. You can't find that in America. It's not possible.
What about the issue of working hard? This analyst said, Americans, they work hard, but Chinese, they work harder.
Well, of course, and that's what I'm saying, at different epochs. So before, America used to be a very hardworking country. That's why when you look at the movie The Men That Built America, you see people who are very, very active and hardworking civilization, and they put in a whole lot to ensure that their civilization grow. But you can't say that of this current generation of the Americans who love enjoyment. They can't even hardly finish high school, a lot of the American children as we speak. And of course, there's effects of drug that is in there, and there's antisocial behaviors that freedom brings. In America, it's also affected the kind of work. When, of course, a child can call police for his mother or father, no discipline. But you can't see that in China, where you are emphasizing democracy and the rule of law, and misdemeanors are tolerated. In America, they cannot be tolerated in China. Hard work is the only way to go in China. If you're not hardworking, then you must be a thief, and then you give your life for it. That can happen in America. So you see, yeah, when you look at it and say, oh, yes, you have some community spirit, you have some level of hard work, but it's not compared to what is happening in China. China work real hard. And you see laborers that are demanding in what they call a good working environment, motivation, and the rest of it. Chinese people are self-motivated. So this is, for me, the real difference. Yes, they can see some people or maybe other ethnic nationality in America doing so well in terms of hard work, but the real Americans are actually losing it as against what's happening in China, because in China, everybody is focusing and seeing how to get an education that is as active and developing as possible, and they have all done all prototypes of anything that you can think in the world. So they are forward thinking, and that's why they have so emerged. And like Putin said, American economy is actually behind China in terms, if people were to rank things rightly.
Do you think the liberal system that the Americans operate is part of its undoing, and the conservative nature of China is also what is helping it shorten certain influences that it thinks would be harmful to its population and to its economy and even other aspects of life in the country, is what has also helped them? Look at their education, for instance, partly the way they want it. Look at the education system in Nigeria, copy here and there. What do you think about it?
Well, that is what it is. When a system is too liberal, and of course you're going to find all manners of behavior, deviant behaviors here and here, and then the law is protecting deviant behaviors. And this is the real issue. You know, earlier on when I spoke, I talked about how the British were able to conquer the Chinese. What was actually behind the Opium War at that time was the fact that the British government was selling opium to the Chinese. And this is what you find. But what you have in China today is that a system that is very regulated, where indiscipline and indolence are not condoned at all. So if you're not hardworking in China, you're on your own. Because you can't steal. If you steal, you die. If you cheat, you die. And all these things are very stringent measures that are put in place constitutionally to govern the country. And so this is what is actually giving the kind of productivity and growth that we see in China today. And so when your laws are so liberal, and like the way the human is
and China. Now let's talk about Nigeria. Now let's take a global policy update back to Nigeria, where the federal government intends to launch new national ID card, in collaboration with NIMC. Now, the plan is to launch 3 sets of new identity cards come May. What do you make of this development? Now they are targeting over 100 million Nigerians. What it means is the new national ID card with a link to your bank account. That's just the advantage. But what do you make of this development? Is there a need for a new national ID card? Let's start with that.
Well, I think it's also to clarify some concept. I don't think it's completely new national ID card. I think what is happening is a collaboration that is happening between Central Bank and NIMC, which is the constitutionally empowered to create national identification, to see how they can harmonize their data with the CBN and the Nigeria Interbank settlement, and everybody come together under one platform, and you have Afrigo to produce a card that has what your name already carry, and that is integrated into banking, and then you can use that card, which you have to request from Afrigo, and then you can use it to do transaction, whether financial transaction or social transaction, as the case may be. So it's not completely a new project as it were, but it's a project that is keying into the existing data of NIMC to ensure that the system is linked together and financial services become more inclusive for those who naturally will not have access. And then, of course, we can also use them for social services like travel and other form of identification. I think that's what the project is all about.
What about the security risk that may be attached to this, when people have vital information in one card linked to their bank accounts? Do you worry that could be a problem?
Well, I don't think it will be so much of a problem. NIMC has assured that they will continue to protect the data of the public. But I think that there should be a legislation really to be in place to regulate access to data. And I think Rwanda had put that law in place in terms of the use of their data. And they say data is private to you. And then, of course, anybody who's wanting access to your data have to seek your consent. Yes, of course, the nation is managing all the data on behalf of everybody, but that does not take away the privacy of the data as it belongs to the individual whose data is captured. And I think that that law needs to also be in place in NIMC so that people don't just take and use your data as it were. But as said, the card that is going to be given should also come with a lot of security features, such that, of course, abuses may become reduced or minimized. But overall speaking, I feel that this is the best thing to happen to us. If we have a card and we have a numbering system that is connected, it will go a long way in reducing the challenge of corruption which we currently face. So what that means for me is that anybody who is stealing money and want to use a front to hide that fund can easily be tracked. So if, for example, I am not working and all of a sudden 100 million naira is entering into my account, EFCC should come and ask me where the money is coming from. So that data become available to security agencies and people can be monitored. So if I'm buying a land somewhere and my number and my card for transaction is there, people should know that I'm the one buying the land. And of course, my status also should show on the card what kind of job I'm doing. And people can see the kind of transaction that is going on that land, can my income really carry it? And if my income is not carrying it, the onus of proof to government is on me to say, oh yes, this is how this money was legitimately earned. So this will reduce cases of fraud and corruption in the country. So that even civil servants of government, public government officials who are taking advantage of the loopholes within the system to steal funds from government become easily traceable. So by this, you have been able to really and hugely reduce the biggest elephant in our room, which is corruption.
But we've heard these arguments before. At the time BVN was launched, it was the same argument put forward. Even when NIN was done, the same arguments. NIN, SIM link, the same thing. And even recently, when the banks started to ask for people to link their BVN with their NIN, it was same argument. What is the guarantee that this will not be another, let's just say, another trial? And after this, we get to hear something else. What has hindered the other methods trying to ensure security and also put a stop or at least curb the level of corruption in the country? What has hindered those other methods from working would also be a problem here.
Yeah, I don't see that happening because the difference here is the fact that you are going to sync the data. The real problem we face right now with BVN and NIMS is the fact that the data are not synced. Everybody is maintaining his own server. That's the difference. So you have data in BVN is in CBN server. You have data in NIMIC is in NIMIC server. So all you need is that if you want to do bank transaction and they say, okay, authority is giving to the bank to be able to access the database to check whether you have a NIM number. But here, what will happen is that the syncing or the globalizing of the data, that with one simple card that you have, every service you need, you don't need a repeat to capture. If you want to go and open bank account today, you will still do thumbprint for BVN. They will still take your photograph. If you want to renew your driver's license, it's the same. If you want to do your international passport, it's the same. But with a NIMIC new mandate, what that means is that with that card, you don't need a new capture. All that is required is that you go to a bank, you want to open a bank account, you just give them your number and they type in all your data from NIM, whatever it is, will show up. So that integration is what has been missing. And once this new system is able to integrate it, then of course, all the issues I'm talking about that has not worked in the time past, we would have overcome it. But you see, of course, why are they also putting it so that you have interbank settlement scheme? Part of this project is to also see that people who don't have access to internet and the rest of them can also use USD to call up this data, and in places where, of course, internet are not available, and then you see that transaction can also happen. So this is what is the difference. So you don't need new thumbprint, you don't need new face ID. You go on the system and you just give them the number, your data show up. And I think that if we can actually put this to use, and even, of course, we can able to be identifying even criminals as they get to police station. The thing you ask from them is, where's your card? And you call up their card, and then you can enter the case against their name. So anywhere else, these things can call up. And I think that's what the world has done in terms of providing security. And I think it's a welcome development for me, for Nigeria, if we can ensure that this happens as quickly as possible.
You know, in Nigeria, there's been this growing concern about access to a centralized database and how reliable or viable this database could be. Now, what would you expect to be put in place this time around to ensure that this database is harmonized, and then you also address the issue of disparity that comes with database, whereby people give distorted information? How do you address that, or would you expect them to address this time around to make it better?
I think NIMIC is already doing that, as far as I'm concerned. Different platform has been made available for the correction of data, so that you can, on your mobile phone today, change your date of birth, you can change your name if there's anything wrong about it. That window is still open, and you are able to correct your email address, your telephone number, and the rest of it at some fee. this platform has been open, and this is in preparatory to the harmonization of data, so that if you have different name on your BVN that is different from the name on NIN, you have this window open for you now to go and change it. Otherwise, like they say in church, if you have the reason why this marriage should not hold, say it now, or forever you remain silent.
Let's talk about the challenges of acquiring this new card when it is launched in June. Now, we saw the rigors that Nigerians had to go through trying to get registered for NIN. Even till date, some have not gotten the national identity card, the permanent card. What do you think is going to happen when this new EID will be launched? Do you foresee a situation where there will be lots of crowd queuing at NIMSI offices? Do you foresee a situation where there are going to be hitches? Or maybe a system isn't working, we haven't gotten cards from Abuja, things like that?
That's not going to happen at all.
Why are you confident?
I'm so confident because it's not government that is handling it. This is a private sector initiative. AfriGold is not a government company. And the goal of AfriGold is to ensure that everybody is numbered, because every card that is produced makes more money for the company owners. So just the way you walk into a bank today and you get your ATM card out, that's how it's going to be, and it's going to be seamless. So, because the things that are difficult are things that you do with government people, where a lot of people are not accountable in terms of, or responsible in terms of job roles and duty that's assigned to them. But this is a private company. And I also know that they're going to recruit a lot of agents, and banks are going to be involved. And so where you're going to get these cards, just like you have MasterCard, you go into any bank, you get it. You have Visa card, you go into any place, you get it. So this is going to happen, and there's not going to be, in my thinking, any such stampede in terms of getting the card.
All right, we just have to wrap up the conversation now. We must thank you for your intervention. Let's hope if this is launched in May, it's going to be a itch-free thing, and the kind of bottleneck that you expect with this kind of exercise will be a thing of the past.
Let's also hope that the cost that Nigerians will pay for it will not be so expensive.
There's no cost that is too expensive to be paid for security, and I think this is a game changer for Nigeria. It's something to be embraced, and every energy should be put in it to make it work right, and I think we're on the right path to growth and progress.
All right, without words of wisdom from the wise man, we just have to leave the conversation here. We'll
My name is Yinka Babalola.
My name is Ijoma Pelokoro.
My name is Joshua Hassan.
I am Rotarian Omotunde Lawson.
It's Ife Yunwarita Ejeze. My friends call me Ife.
My name is Rotarian Lola Dare. I'm inviting you to keep watching SOUQ News. It's the right station to tune to.
I like SOUQ News. SOUQ News is good.
I want to charge you all to listen to SOUQ News, watch the news.
You can have unlimited news first time.
Find SOUQ News. Be with SOUQ News. Never switch off. You are better for it. SOUQ News is the real thing.
Listen to their coverage and you'll be glad you did.
Turn to your YouTube, turn to your Instagram, turn to all your digital channels and look for SOUQ News.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Please guys, keep watching
SOUQ News.
Broad Street, situated in Lagos Island, is steeped in Nigerian history. Once the biggest financial hub of the country, it housed the headquarters of major banks, linked the CBN, the stock exchange, and the loads of lender companies. Broad Street is a historically significant street. It has played a central role in the development of Lagos and history, an important commercial and administrative center for the British colonial authorities. It was also a home to some of the city's earliest modern buildings. Broad Street was a residential area in the pre-colonial era. With the British came the Methodist Boys High School in 1878 and the Broad Street Prison in 1882, renamed Freedom Park. The General Hospital, which was a British military hospital, was built in 1893, being the first general hospital in Nigeria. The old British Secretariat building, which is now the Federal Ministry of Justice, was built in 1906. Broad Street has seen a full turn into modern commercial office blocks, complexes, skyscrapers, and markets from the outer marina through Akpombo, early into the Adeliji-Adele Road. Broad Street is one of the busiest streets in Nigeria on weekdays, where commercial activities take place day and night. From modern buildings to ancient structures, this street gives one a raw dose of life in Lagos. Broad Street is often referred to as Lagos Financial District. It boasts a mix of architectural styles, reflecting its long history, colonial-era buildings, Victorian and Edwardian architectural features, alongside more modern skyscrapers and structures. Broad Street remains a vital, vibrant part of the Nigerian economy. Broad Street. SOUQ Enlightenment.
Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the eco-greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, SOUQ Enlightenment.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. Today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Apologies for that interruption occasioned by a hitch. Moving on, the conversation now will center on the hike in electricity tariff in Nigeria. So many electricity consumers have been complaining about the recent hike in electricity price. So the federal government is saying that it has planned to move Nigerians, all of them, to Band A. So when some Nigerians were asking why has electricity tariff in their area or where they live have been increased? So this schools had to come up with explanation of how the bands are shared or categorized. You have different bands, and so there's a certain tariff allocated to each band. You have band A, B, C, D, and E. A seems to be the top among them, depending on the number of hours that they consume. That's what a band is categorized by, the number of hours that they enjoy electricity for. Now, the federal government says it has planned to move all Nigerians to band A, which means that all Nigerians will begin to enjoy more hours of electricity within a 3-year period. But what would be the cost implication of this, and how is it going to happen? We have joining us via Zoom Ambassador Oboise Phillips, who is President, CEO, Statewide Waste and Environment Education Foundation, and SOUQ Foundation. Good morning, welcome to Earl Exchange. Please, can you unmute your mic so we can hear you clearly?
Oh, sorry for that. Very good morning to you. I'm happy to be here.
All right, thank you for joining us. So let's look at electricity. Energy is needed for production, is needed for daily living. Now the tariff have been increased across board, not really across board, but for some bands in Nigeria. What are your take on the electricity tariff hike and also the power that is made available to the consumers?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. And to give my take on the present hike on electricity tariff across the country, especially for some bands, as they say. I'll start by saying that it is quite unfortunate that the way our country is being run, many times one is not very certain of governmental policies and policy direction. Sincerely, I am at a loss as to, especially between NNPC and what do you call it, PHCN. Sometimes I don't know to what level the government still has interest in these businesses. I'm confused. I try to keep tab with the level of government's ownership and government's interference and government's involvement with PHCN, and so it makes it difficult for one to make appropriate commentaries with respect to this, because you don't know whether they are still government corporations, whether they are no longer government corporations, whether it's just government cannot release and still have a tete-a-tete to the different strings of these corporations. So I think that is where the problem lies. The PHCN has grossly underperformed. And I say this with pain because I'm one of the customers that applied for their prepaid meters for some time now. And I have followed up with it, and the stories are just too many. Government is not approving the new this thing. Government is doing this, and the stories are just too many, and you don't know where to hold onto it. So for me, the new tariff increase is so uncalled for. Why do I say that it is so uncalled for? It is performance that should drive this increase, whether for NNPC, whether for petroleum, for anything, any service whatsoever. It is performance that should drive increase in price. But what we see here in Nigeria is that the poorer the performance, the more increase, and with vote face, with arrogance, with sheer arrogance, the poorer the performance, the worse the performance, the more the increase. I think poor performance drives increase in prices in Nigeria. And there is no hope for the people. There is no remedy. You can't remedy it. Go to anywhere. They have so many customers that even if you decide to leave, it doesn't matter. That is because of our large population. So I feel that this increase is so uncalled for. It is not driven by availability of electricity. Month in, month out, you hear there's going to be an increase, there's an increase, month in, month out. Not that they have done anything with the last increase. Nothing tangible is on the ground based on the last increase, and there is another increase, and there is going to be another increase, and there will be another increase, just like in the fuel sector. So it's quite unfortunate. My take on it is that it's quite unnecessary and uncalled for. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador, glad to see you once again. What do you make of this argument on the part of the Minister of Power that the initial increase is going to affect just a segment of the consumers, about 1.5 million, according to the minister, which is those who belong to the Band A category? Now, do you see this to be valid, and how do you think this should have been approached differently now that Nigerians are reacting negatively to this development?
I listen to the minister. Again, the arrogance of those in power. The arrogance of those in power. And I have seen governments over the years, I'm over 50 years old. I've seen government over the years deliberately tell lies just to allow the policy to pass. When the policy passes, everything will remain as normal. Nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. Government is not interested in performance, in delivering quality service delivery to the people. Government is not interested in that. They are not interested in causing any measurable, tangible change from what the situation was before they came in. No, you're not going to see any tangible change because this minister said that. Ministers in time past have said things like that just to push the policy through. And once the policy is pushed through, everything remains normal. So I don't reckon with it. In fact, I've stopped commenting on public issues because it is a waste of time and resources and energy because the government is not interested in service delivery, in helping the people. It is good governance that should drive those things, not subsequent each and every government, each and every minister, each and every commissioner coming up with one noble idea, one idea or whatever, just to let it be said that things are happening. Not because that thing is going to have any positive impact on the lives of the people. Meanwhile, we know globally that the welfare of the people and the security of the people is the number one, should be the number one priority of government. But with our government, not with this particular government, not with this government particularly, but with all of them, this one inclusive, all of them without exception, the people are not prioritized. So I do not reckon again with what the minister was saying. I heard him talking about people leaving electricity. Look, let them deliver on this first. First things first. Let's see the electricity. Let's have the electricity. People are going through emotional trauma. Challenges are facing the citizens on a daily basis. And government, only what we hear are rhetorics, like the minister just made. And I tell you with all sincerity, that statement was made just to push through the policy. You can come back to me another 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It will still be the same thing. It is the same thing happening in the security sector. It is happening in the oil and gas sector. It is happening in the electricity power sector. Just push through the policy and let it pass. Once it passes, everything is the same thing. Yeah.
All right, let's look at the reason behind the increase. So according to the Minister of Power, now the increase of tariff for Band A customers, which are referred to as the premium customers, from 68 naira to 225 naira per kilowatt. So it's the first step in government's move to remove subsidy from power. And the argument went forward to say that those in Band A would actually be saving more than they would have spent if they were to alternate power from the national grid with generators and maybe other source of power. What is your take on this? Do you think that the Band A customers, even with the new tariff, are actually enjoying the power that they pay for?
You see, like I have mentioned earlier, you have a policy, you want to come up with a policy of a subsidy removal, and the first thing to do is to increase. I ask myself, what does government benefit from the suffering of the people? Is there a special enjoyment that comes by reason of the government visiting suffering and hardship on the people? Is there a special benefit? Yet governments allow loopholes in their budgeting, in their policies, in everything. People, the citizens, let me not say people, let's call them the citizens, so that they can come under the auspices of the Constitution. The citizens are daily scammed. Government allow investors to scam the people. That is what's happening. That excuse of the Ministry of Power is lame. It needs a walking stick. It is incapacitated. It is a lame excuse. And because in Nigeria we have no capacity to challenge them, if you try to challenge them, you see how lengthy the process will be. That challenge will remain there until they are done with the 4 years or the 8 years or how long the president allows them to remain in office. So it's of no use. And that is why they continue to give lame excuses. What subsidy removal? Haven't we seen what the subsidy removal? So I think that those of you that work in media houses should be more courageous in when you interface with these public officers. Should be more courageous in interfacing with them, since we do not have access to interface with them. What excuses is that? Will I allow the manager in my firm, in my business, to give me that kind of excuse? You want to remove subsidy. Why not let performance drive that? Why not let the availability of the commodities drive that? Availability of the commodities, let it drive that. Then let us see what we will be missing if we don't pay more. And every government policy is directed at price increase. Look, this is to the government and those people who occupy one position, whether appointed or elected. The same energy you use to come up with policies that cause hardship on the people is the same energy you will use to come up with policies that will be favorable to the people. Why spend time concocting negative policies? Why? I mean, to the government, the elected and the appointed. Why spend energy developing? If you give better thoughts to these ideas, you will see the positive ones, the ones that you will get positive ideas on how to advance the cause of the country and make the people happy for once as citizens. For once as citizens. Each person that enters any governmental office in Nigeria, the first thing he's thinking about is how to increase one price or the other and visit hardship on the people. Of what benefit is it that somebody is a citizen of a country? I just returned from the United States. At every level, you see a benefit for somebody, not just for the United States citizens, for people who live there. But here, I think the excuse is not sitting very well with me, and I'm not comfortable with it. You can't get the meter. They increase power, the tariff. There is no meter. I have applied for one since last year, and they are turning me about, and there is no remedy. It does not sit well with me, and it's quite unfortunate, but that is what it is. We are in Nigeria.
Let's look at the business side to this development. Now that the implication of this will be the increase from 66 naira, the tariff from 66 naira to 225 naira per kilowatt. Now, what will be the implication of these businesses, especially small businesses in Nigeria?
The implication is dire. I run a small business here in Surulere, Lagos, and I pay as much. They simply refuse to give me a meter. So I pay as much as 90,000, 100,000, 120,000 monthly. The least I have paid is 75,000 for a small business. I will pay less if I get metered. So the implication is very, because they tell us that in my area, the reason why we are paying much is because we are in Band C, or is it Band B or Band C? Definitely not Band A. What you pay, you don't get to see the light. And I don't understand our government. Every country is driven by small businesses. The Dangotes and the big banks, they have their place in the development of a nation. But a country that kills small businesses through policies, I can't see hope for that country if on daily basis our government continue to churn out policies that negatively affect small businesses. So how are you going to create employment if the small businesses are run out of business? Government officials every day loiter the streets, victimizing small businesses. PSCN officials every day loiter the streets, victimizing small business owners. Local government officials parading the street on daily basis, victimizing and intimidating small business owners. Then government itself coming up with multiple taxation from every area. Those still doing small businesses in Nigeria is just because, there's this adage that says we lean on our knees because there is no other place to lean on. It is not because, it's just that you can't just sit down at home doing nothing. But as for the government, this over 300% increase in tariff, when we know that the service will not be rendered, when we know that meters will not be available, why not first of all let them make sure by government policy, make sure that everyone is metered? They will make more money if more people are metered. A large quantum of Nigerians are not metered. So is the same thing happening in the tax, this thing. Instead of making sure that everybody is brought into the tax net, government will prefer to visit the tax liability of the whole nation on the few who pays tax. That is laziness in governance. And that is what is happening in the power sector. Only few people paying for the light burden or power burden of the whole nation. Because the operators, the government and the officials are lazy. You go to the office to see them, they are in meetings. Those meetings yield nothing. So long as the people still suffer hardship all around, you get to the banking sector, your citizens are suffering hardship. You get to the filling stations, your people are suffering hardship. You get to the police station, your people are suffering hardship. You get to NEPA, what do you call it, PHCNs, your people are suffering hardship. And there is a government in place. This government inclusive, past governments all included. And each time you have opportunity to come up with policy, the policy is price increase. I think our leaders should cover themselves in shame. They do not know what they do not know the offices they occupy, what they should be doing. I can't be a father if at every point in time I am with a whip descending on my children. At every point in time, not for once do I show them, take them to amusement park, take them to ShopRite, take them to wherever, and give them the benefit of fatherhood. Each time they see me, I'm with a whip. Each time I come back from work, I'm with a whip. And the children will run helter-skelter, the family will be crying. Is that a father? Is that what fatherhood should be? Is that what leadership should be? Thank you.
That the governors seem to be like a father with a whip. Now, the removal of subsidy from electricity may look that way, but the government says that the removal of subsidy, which has started, will save the country about 1.4 trillion naira regarding what it had targeted or budgeted to spend for subsidy of electricity. Now, you are someone who's into waste and environmental education. Aside the national grid, are there other sources of energy that should be explored with the savings from the removal of subsidy from electricity? 1.4 trillion naira already is said to be saved or will be saved from the recent hike in electricity tariff.
Government is lying to us. Each time this statement is made, nothing is saved. Or if funds are saved by reason of the tariff increase, by the reason of the subsidy removal, the officials steal them. Because I have never seen, not even in this petroleum, the subsidy removal in the petroleum listing, have I read the report, have I seen the report where it is said that because subsidy was removed, we have gained this money and this is what we are doing with it. So when government said that money will be saved and they are rhetoric, like I have said earlier, to push through a policy. Just a statement being made to push through a policy. If money indeed will be saved from subsidy removal, from tariff increase, what is it being used for? I mean, why can't they understand? Let government mobilize the people. Let us get this country going. With electricity, men and women will go out there and make a living for themselves without depending on the government. But no, governments at every point in time, every 3 months, every 6 months, every subsequent government will come and tell us that there's going to be a tariff increase, that we'll do this. Look, let me tell you, in my current business, I depend entirely on PHCN. When there is no light, we pack up. We just sit down idle. No work. Because the alternative is to depend on diesel. And diesel, from when I started this business, was selling for 180 naira or something, 185 naira. At the last count, it is selling for 1,550 naira. And it is not even available. Then every day we are carrying we are moving with jerrycan, scavenging for diesel. Our government does not have conscience. Those in leadership positions do not have conscience. So I do not believe government when they say so, that money will be saved from this and there won't be any need to depend on alternative energy. When we know the percentage of electricity power that is generated vis-a-vis the power that is transmitted because of bad infrastructure. And government talks to people and they think that the people are daft. The people are not daft. Before the emergence of social media, yes, we all depend on traditional media. So when government says anything, there's no way to challenge it. Now we have opportunity to know that what government is saying most likely is not true. So I do not depend on alternative. When there is no electricity, we sit down. It is all of us losing. It is all of us losing. It is the country losing. When you have a large retinue of young energy sitting idle, see men and women on the streets. People make the streets their offices. Fellow citizens, just to earn a living, come on to troop into the streets and make business out of the street by victimizing citizens. And nothing can be done. And there is a government in place. So I do not believe the government. All that is necessary is for the government to show good faith, show goodwill, by first of all performing, getting the investors in the PHCN sector to perform. When they do, then they can announce an increase. If not, let them continue doing it the way they are doing it. We are all here together, the country, we are here. We're not going to run away. It's our country. We'll continue to work to make it better. God will help us. One of us will start having people in positions of leadership who will think population first, citizens first. Yeah.
Ambassador Phillips, it's good to know that you concluded it's our country and we have to make it better. We're not done with you yet, but we just need to go on this short break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with our guest. Please stay with us.
The Three Wise Men. Iconic sculptures and statues adorn major metropolitan cities of the world. In Lagos, Nigeria, the statue of three men designed to depict the state's cultural heritage and to usher in visitors and tourists into the ever-accommodating center of excellence is no doubt an astounding work of art. Originally built under the administration of Colonel Raji Rasaki, designed by Bodu Shodende in 1991 and standing over 12 feet high, referred to as Agba Meta or Aro Meta, the three sculptured chiefs were placed along the Lagos-Ibadan toll gate to welcome people coming into Lagos State. The statue called the Three Wise Men by many has become a major signature for the state. Three white-capped chiefs clad in white wrappers, knotted across their shoulders and with clenched right fists are shown in the artwork. The images fascinate and create impressions in the minds of visitors coming into the state, captivating the attention of visitors who look with keen interest, pondering on the messages which the posture of the engraved images signifies. The Three Wise Men has been relocated thrice from its original position at Ojodu Berger end of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway to Magodo area before its final relocation to its present site at Olowopopo Drive. The sculpture has suffered severe damages over the years and renovated. Bodu Shodende, through this sculpture, depicted the highest honor that can be afforded to anyone in the Eko greeting tradition. The Three Wise Men, Arometa, SOUQ Enlightenment.
The challenge of governance is to see how we can leverage what is on the ground and convert this to wealth for the people.
Russia, China are gaining entry into Africa, and it would appear that some Western countries are losing out.
You're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
For Social Security to work, we need to know exactly how many we are. We don't have a precise number. We need to know exact location of people.
When we address this exchange rate volatility, we will see definitely cost of goods and services will come down.
From a security point of view, we should employ the technology to ensure that we can track individuals and goods within the continent.
This is Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele.
You know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming.
And Blessing Aiche.
We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad to know you're still there with us. It's the Early Exchange, and we're still looking at the hike in electricity tariff, which our guest, Ambassador Phillips, was giving his perspective. Don't forget, you can also be part of this conversation. We know the issue of electricity will affect you or definitely affect you. So all you just have to do is to go on our social media platform, on our YouTube page, using the hashtag Early Exchange to share your view on the impact of these on your businesses or as an individual in your area. What has been the experience when it comes to the issue of electricity? Let's shift the conversation back to our guest, Ambassador Phillips, who is joining us virtually. Glad to know you're still there with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Now let's talk about the collapse of the national grid. According to the International Energy Agency, the national grid has collapsed in the last 6 years for 46 times. Now, what do you think is likely responsible for this perpetual collapse of the national grid, and what can be done to address this? Talk about the transmission line and alternatives that can be deployed into this when it comes to technology.
Thank you very much. Over 40 times, the national grid has collapsed. And the government has not deemed it necessary to focus its attention to address that challenge. The only thing they do when they come to the office in the morning is to generate ideas on how to increase tariff. Do you know what it does to the psyche of the people to know that in their country, it is a regular thing for the national grid to collapse? And our government does not feel ashamed or insulted that an infrastructure as important, as fundamental as the national grid collapses so often. To the shame of the country and the leaders, and all they can talk about, all they can discuss is tariff increase. I think the challenge is having
to butt in, but what I'm asking is for you to provide solutions to this problem. We understand the angle you're coming from, but let our conversation be solution driven. Now, the collapse of the national grid, I would like you to focus on what should be the solutions, the alternatives, especially correcting the transmission line, which is the critical area when it comes to the issue of the national grid.
Definitely, I'll talk about the solution. But do you even think that what solution we discuss here will matter anything to these people in positions of leadership? But for you to talk about the solution, you have to talk about the problem. The government needs to know that we are no longer at ease with their lack of performance in office. Talking about solution, government must make sure, that is the starting point, that budgetary provisions for maintenance, first of all, is strictly adhered to and implemented. Because that is where it starts from. When there infrastructure development or for the maintenance of public infrastructure, if it is inadequately provided for or stolen when provided for, then they cannot maintain it. So number one, the government must make sure that if no other part of the budget performs, that this portion of the budget must perform. And again, government institutions of oversight, including the National Assembly, must make sure that if there is a provision, for example, in 2024 budget, for the maintenance of power of the power infrastructure, of the network of power infrastructure, they don't leave that to political contractors. They must make sure that whatever contractor is contracted to execute such projects, that contractor, in fact and indeed, executes that maintenance project. It is the lack of maintenance over the years, despite budgetary provisions, that has resulted in this incessant collapse of the national grid. So the solution, make adequate budgetary provision, ensure that when provided for, when funds are provided, that those funds are in fact and indeed utilized. It will not be enough to say that funds have been marked for this project and there is no oversight to ensure that those projects are carried out. And finally, where a contractor or an agency or an institution is in charge of maintenance of our network of power infrastructures, and that power and that network fails, there are people in positions who should be queried, who should lose their job, who should suffer as a result of that. When a country does not punish infractions, when we as a people can jeopardize our national interest because of our personal interests, when we sabotage national interest and don't get paid, there is no repercussion. I have many instances. So I have given you 3 solutions. Government must make sure, and not just government, the media, the civil society, all agencies necessary, especially the oversight agencies, must make sure that funds are budgeted. And we must also make sure, number 2, that when budgeted for, that the funds are utilized for that purpose. Maintenance actually, in fact, and indeed carried out. Then 3, if there is a lack of performance along the way across the value chain, there should be punishment. But here, for all the collapses we have witnessed in the past, nobody loses his job. Everything continues as normal. And when the person retires, the person receive all kinds of accolades as a former NEPA or PHCN, this former this or former that. The person gets a higher appointment. That is why the national grid will continue to collapse. But God forbid that continues to happen, because I believe
in order for the national grid not to continue to collapse, there is the need for an energy mix. Now, like I asked earlier, you are into waste management education. Now, what other kind of energy can private investors put their money in, put their expertise in, to take the pressure off the national grid and to create an energy mix that will make sure that energy is available to all Nigerians? What would you advise?
I will advise strong investment, not government investment, private investment in alternative means of energy, power. especially solar, because we are in this region where there is abundance of sunlight. There should be increased investment in solar. And possibly, yes, there are other vesting, but I think solar is the main thing that can generate strong electricity for household domestic use for Nigerians. And I think Nigerians are beginning to invest in solar. Some of us are now depending on solar and inverter for electricity supply. It's just that for our businesses, for now, the level of solar availability, solar power availability from solar cannot power machineries. If not, a whole lot of people would have started divesting from the national grid for their machineries. But power from solar, we still have some limitations at this level in Nigeria. So a lot of people already investing in solar as a result of the failure from the national grid. So I think more people should make that investment, especially those with sufficient financial resources to make such investment in solar as an alternative energy. But for the government, they should be looking at the possibility of a nuclear plant. With over 200 million people, power from Kayanji Dam and so on can no longer sustain us at this level. Government should be talking about possible introduction of a nuclear plants in Nigeria to power our electricity, because the Kayanji dams and the marine environment can no longer provide, especially where the water bodies from Nigeria come from outside Nigeria, and so we can no longer entirely depend on that. Government has to make that investment with respect to nuclear energy, while the private sector concentrates on tapping from solar, from wind. The technology for wind energy is not so developed in Nigeria, but it can still give us some little. For those of us in the waste sector, I have been in meetings where the issue of biofuel, fuel from concentrated regions of, waste dumps and landfills and dump sites, where if they have lasted for a long time, you see them generating methane gas, and there have been discussions. There's been discussions to tap into biofuel as a source of energy, but I don't see that giving us sufficient firepower in terms of power generation. I think what we have to depend on so much for now is solar energy, and a whole lot of families are depending on that. But I will encourage the government to start to look critically and fundamentally at nuclear power, because that is what is happening globally. That's the only way you can give power to a large proportion of your population. So talking about power mix, I think I'll be suggesting to the government nuclear power, and I'll be suggesting to the private sector solar power. Yep.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Boyce Phillips, for being with us today on the show. We value your contributions, and we know that you're angry as a power consumer, but we can only be hopeful, and it is not good for us to lose hope. Things have changed with continuous talking, continuous push. Let's be optimistic.
Yeah, here we're going to make our country great by the special grace of God.
And we also like to say that the opinions of our guest, Ambassador Boyce Phillips, on the issues discussed today are his and do not reflect the position of SOUQ News. We thank you for being with us on the show today, all the way from 8 a.m. to this time. Let's do it again tomorrow. The show returns 8 a.m. West African time. I'm Blessing Age. You can watch this show from beginning when you go to YouTube and start all over again. Do have yourself a great day.
Yes, it's the beginning of a new week. Ensure that you maximize your time and season, because lost time is never found. Ensure that whatever you do this week, you maximize your time and season very well. Don't forget the conversation continues.